Hello and welcome. My name is Gemstone, and today we are back in the story of our life beginning and always. Hello, Potato, and hello, Sky. Welcome. How are you guys doing today? So, we're going to get right back into it, into growing. We're getting older in our young teenage lives. So, let's see what this one is about. Early one afternoon, you found yourself in the living room with your family. It was another one of those summer days where it felt too hot to go outside, but it was too uncomfortable to do anything inside either. The air conditioner was cranked up as far as you could negotiate it, but everyone was still being pretty lazy. You, your moms, and sister were lounging around while the TV blared on in the backdrop, ignored by all of you. You specifically were drooped over the coffee table, perched on the arm of the couch, sitting cross-legged on the floor. You looked out the windows at the backyard. Not that there was anything of particular interest to watch. Elizabeth broke the silence with a loud groan. You glanced over. She was lying on her back over the couch, massaging her calf with one hand. I feel terrible. I'm dying in this house, and my legs hurt. Mom looked up from the magazine she'd barely been flipping through and frowned, concerned. Could you have strained them somehow? Elizabeth flailed briefly, then flopped onto her side with a heavy sigh. I don't know, it just hurts. Ma got up from her seat at the kitchen table and walked over to your sister. She did a light pat on Elizabeth's shoulders sympathetically. I'm sorry you have to deal with that. Maybe it's growing pains. You could be taller by next fall. Elizabeth scoffed. She didn't look impressed by Ma's assessment. I'd rather be my height forever than deal with this. Mom walked over too, leaning against the back of the couch. Kids, they grow up so fast. Soon Elizabeth will have a home of her own, maybe even with a nice husband and some kids if she feels like it. She's like 16 or something, 18, 17. She's not that old yet. She sniffed loudly and wiped at her eye, but you could tell that it was just a bit. She's 34, totally. You tilted your head. Even though you knew Elizabeth liked guys, it was hard to imagine her with a boyfriend or husband. She only seemed invested in hanging out with her group of friends, not chasing after boys. I think she was like 17-ish. Don't remember for sure. I think that was it, because I'm 14, right? And then back then we were 8 and 11? I think. Mom must agree with you, because she shook her head. Let's not exaggerate. She's still practically a child. But if you ever do pursue romance, Elizabeth, you can come talk to me about it. Definitely. We're always willing to lend an ear. Elizabeth's features contorted in disgust. No way. I'm not talking to my moms about that. Mom's jaw dropped. And she gasped in an exaggerated display of shock. Her hand came up to rest against her chest. Ma only grinned. She didn't look offended by Elizabeth's quick response at all. Hello, Nintendiot. Welcome. You're 13 and 15 respectively for step 2. Ah, so it was 8 and 10 before? Good to know. Thank you. 13 and 15. 15 is even further away from an adult. It really wouldn't be so bad to come to us. I know what it's like to have a crush on a pretty boy or two. I don't, but I can listen anyway. Mom snorted at her own joke while Ma burst into giggles. They were having a little too much fun at Elizabeth's expense. Elizabeth certainly wasn't feeling the amusement, because she rolled her eyes and sat up. I'm going back to my room. I'd rather melt alone, thanks. She strode off towards the staircase, taking the steps 2 at a time. Your mom stared after her, then turned to each other with raised eyebrows. Whoops, looks like we scared her off with all that romance talk. Oh well, we'll get her next time. You watched them titter with some surprise. Obviously your moms liked women, but you had no idea that Ma liked guys too. Today was the first time you'd heard her say something like that. Ma, I always thought you only liked ladies. You like guys too? Ma turned to you, happy to bring you into things now that you'd spoken up. She smiled and nodded. That's right, I like both. But I like your mom most out of everyone. She's special. Ma's smile turned all soft in the corners, like it usually did when she looked at her. She pinched Mom's cheek lightly. Mom reached up to cup a hand over Ma's. Even when Ma stopped pulling her cheek, their hands remained clasped together. Thanks, Lonnie. I think most women have charm, but no one can hold a candle to you. Pamela. Ma beamed, then kissed Mom on the cheek she'd been pinching before. You thought the moment was very sweet. You smiled to yourself at the sight. No matter how often your moms expressed their feelings for each other, it was always nice to witness it. Ma looked back to you, letting Mom's hand go with a brief squeeze. She settled down next to you, and Mom followed soon after. You know, I'm also here to listen to you whenever you're ready. That offer isn't just for Elizabeth. She bumped her shoulder with yours, a reassuring smile in place. There's no rush, of course. You can take all the time you need to figure out what or who you want. Don't think you have to stick with whatever you come up with right now, either. Life's nice like that. It can change, and you can learn. Mom nodded her agreement. The two of us are happy to hear you out, and we may be able to relate better than you think. Still, we won't push the topic. At least, most of the time. She gave Ma the weakest scathing look possible, while being unable to stop grinning. You nodded silently. You weren't sure what to say to that. Mom let out another exaggerated sniffle. It didn't take a genius to realize it was fake. First Elizabeth and now you, Gemstone? Do you have to grow up? Yes, children tend to do that from time to time. Your parents quickly grew absorbed in their conversation about rearing kids. You took that as your cue to leave, getting up so you could spend some time alone in your room too. They let you go without a problem, so you made your way up the stairs. You let out a sigh once you stepped into your room. It was just as sweltering in there as it was in the living room, possibly even a little warmer. You couldn't even open up your window since it was hotter outside, and you just let the AC out. You dragged your feet as you crossed the room. You checked your current sweltering condition in the mirror as you passed by it. You thought back to the conversation you'd had downstairs, about growing up and all that. After a moment, you stepped a bit closer to the mirror. You stared into it, then turned away from the surface to look down at yourself. You were definitely growing all right. It was weird thinking about how you were now, in comparison to what you'd been when you were younger. When it came to your body, it... What's the difference between heavyset and chubby? I don't know much body terms. Yeah. I was kinda chubby when I was a teen. Not that I'm not now, but less so. You shifted to the side, your head still facing forward and continuing the self-evaluation from this viewpoint. There was no mistaking it, even with your shirt helping to obscure your form. You had boobs now. You took a step backwards, finished with your impromptu inspection. You locked eyes with your reflection, cocking your head to the side. All things considered, you didn't look too bad. A slight smile tugged at your mouth. Sure, maybe you wouldn't be a model or anything, but you weren't half bad. I think I'm fairly pretty. You shook your head roughly, putting thoughts of what you were turning into out of your mind. This wasn't the time to focus on such things. You had to find something to do in this heat. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Potato. You shuffled over to your bed, collapsing onto the mattress, your brows scrunched up in thought. Nah, you have a hardwood floor and you're choosing to lie on the bed in the heat? Dude, just spread out on that thing. It's gonna be degrees cooler. Time passed slowly, and to your annoyance, possible ideas about what to do were few and far between. Hard floor is good too. Hard floor lover? Heck yeah. Especially in the summer, it's just so much nicer. And in the winter, you can wear slidey socks and slip around. As long as you're careful, because I am not a stranger to falling down or slipping a stair or two. Anyway. But yeah, hard floors, so much easier to clean. So much better in the summer. Just, yeah. Alright. You weren't sure how long it had been, but eventually you heard your mom call you from downstairs. Gemstone! There's a call for you. Cove wants to come over, is that alright? You perked up at the words, sitting up in bed. You yelled back to her immediately. Yeah! You got to your feet and headed downstairs, eager to see your friend. You needed to go downstairs soon anyway, because your empty stomach told you it was almost time for lunch. Just as you reached the bottom of the stairs, you saw Mom put the phone back on the receiver. She glanced at Ma, leaning her hip against the kitchen counter. Well, here comes trouble. We better prepare ourselves. Ma clicked her tongue in clear disapproval of Mom's words. He's such a good boy. Cove never wants to cause trouble. He can just be a bit thoughtless and impulsive. Oh, I know, he's very sweet, but that's what makes it more of a problem. If a stranger or some kid from school was egging Gemstone on to behave badly, I think we can both agree that she'd do the right thing in the end. But if Cove Holden got into a reckless mood and wanted Gemstone to be a part of the ride, can we really be certain of what call she'd make then? Oh my goodness. Yes, I think so. Gemstone helps Cove settle down. He would have gotten himself in more trouble without her. Aw. You have a point. Ma just laughed. As she turned away, still snorting, her eyes met yours. She blinked in surprise, then waved at you with an easy grin. Mom looked over, noticing you at the foot of the stairs as well. I didn't expect you to come down already, Gemstone. I just wanted to let you know what was happening. You pretended you didn't overhear their conversation. No, I didn't mean to lie. Yeah, it's okay. I just got here. I didn't mean to lie. Sag. Oops. You called Mom out on her comment. I don't like lying. Well, if I hadn't come now, then I wouldn't have heard everything you said. Oh, you got caught, Pam. You were saying things too. I didn't say anything I wouldn't have told to Gemstone directly. Oh, you're unbelievable. You shook your head at your parents, even as you fought a blush when you remembered just what they'd been discussing. All right, you got me. I'm sorry for being gossipy and saying that about your friend. I can be bad too. We'll get out of your way now. Mom sighed in mock defeat and made her way down the hall. Ma followed after her with a hushed giggle. Now you were alone in the living room, tasked with... I can speak. Oof. Now you were alone in the living room, tasked with waiting for Cove. And that was just fine with you. If it hadn't been so hot outside, you would have visited him at his house a long time ago. You took a seat at the kitchen counter and settled in for the wait. As expected, there was a knock on the door a few minutes later. When you got up and answered it, your neighbor was standing on the other side. He came in once you stepped aside to let him pass, giving a little wave. You greeted him as you typically did, with a wave. You waved back, closing the door behind him with your free hand. Cove sighed and wiped his face a bit. You noted the sheen of sweat across his brow. He must be glad to be back in an air-conditioned place, even if he only had to walk across the street to get there. Is something going on? Why'd you want to come over? I don't want to do anything. Not when it's like this. He gestured vaguely to the humid air hanging around. I thought I could at least do nothing with you. Why is that so cute? You thought that was really sweet. His words were nice and expressed real fondness over you, in a strange sort of way, which was usually the case with Cove. Have you had lunch yet? I was gonna do it soon. He shook his head. I haven't really felt like eating because of the heat. I probably should have lunch. I didn't have breakfast this morning. You didn't eat at all? Then you gotta have something now. You urged Cove in the direction of the kitchen. He stumbled after you. Okay. As one, you headed into the kitchen. You crossed your arms as you glanced around, wondering what you should scrounge up for a meal. I don't want to eat anything that's warmed up. Is there something cold or not cooked? Yeah. After a bit of back and forth, the two of you concluded that you should raid the fridge and cabinet in order to make sandwiches. That's exactly what I was thinking. Sandwiches are so good on a hot day. Especially if you get some like crisp lettuce, some tomatoes, some mayo. Woof, that's yummy. With that settled, you had planned to decide on the outside layers first. There was a wide variety to choose from, since everyone in your house had their own favorites. There was white bread, wheat bread, sourdough, mixed grains, gluten-free bread, and pita pockets. Could you take the green one for me? Sure. You reached for the mixed grains, then made your decision. Sourdough. You pulled out the sourdough, too, settling both items onto the counter. Then you had to decide what main direction the sandwich would go in. Ooh. Well, I like ham sandwich, so probably savory. Something savory would make it feel like a real meal. As for the specific ingredients, onions, lettuce, tomatoes, ham, ooh, peppers, cheddar. And then you moved on to condiments. For the finishing touch, you intended to top your sandwich with mayo and barbecue sauce. But we don't have anything. It would be barbecue sauce as well. And that was everything. You nodded to yourself with a quiet hum, satisfied. The two of you bustled around the kitchen, opening and closing things in order to collect everything you needed for your individual sandwiches. You focused intently on assembling your own for the most part. When you were close to being done, though, you glanced over at your neighbor. Cove was putting his sandwich together delicately, his brow furrowed and tongue sticking out just barely. Oh, focus face. Yay. There were open jars of peanut butter and honey near his plate, as well as a banana peel. Ah, peanut butter, honey, banana. Valid combination. Mayo, gosh, why? It's yummy! A nice aioli. Oof. So he was making a peanut butter, banana, and honey sandwich on mixed grain bread. My dad liked ham and peanut butter sometimes, so you didn't think much of that. Oh, also, you guys ever had a toasted PB and cheese sandwich? Oh man, now I want one. It's been so long. I have peanut butter, I have cheese, just don't have bread right now. Maybe I'll get some bread. It wasn't that surprising or interesting. Curiosity satiated, you turned back to your plate and finished your own creation. By the time you were done, Cove had already cleaned up his workstation. He turned to face you, studying your sandwich briefly. It's just getting worse. Wait, you don't like garlic aioli? Where'd my desktop audio go? Oh, just a quiet part of the song. Anyway. A small smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. You guessed it didn't look inedible to him, at least. Done? Yeah. He waited as we quickly returned the ingredients and cleaned a few utensils. Then the two of you collected your respective plates. You both agreed on heading upstairs to hang out in your room. Aw, you know what would go really well with this as well? Like some chips or Doritos or something like on the side. Ooh, that would be good. Now that's a lemonade or like iced tea. Oh, that's a good summer lunch. Oh yeah. You and Cove entered your bedroom while balancing your food on the plates. Nothing fell, so it was a successful trip. You're telling me an ice made this tea? Heck yeah, that's just the way it should be. Cove took a seat on the ground, stretching out on the hardwood floor in an attempt to keep a bit cooler. Exactly! He immediately took a big bite of his sandwich, chewed, then hummed happily. This sandwich is really good. At least that's something. At this point, you sat down and started on your own sandwich. You nodded. You were enjoying yours too. Obviously, you were a pro at making sandwiches. He leaned back on his hands while chewing and glanced around. His every movement was sluggish. Wanna do something? It seemed the plan of not doing anything at all had already worn thin, despite his lack of enthusiasm. Like what? He rolled his head back, looking up at the ceiling. What about tic-tac-toe? Sure, why not? You put your plate to the side and pulled out some markers and scrap paper. As you laid everything on the floor, he scooted back to make more room in front of you. Cove picked up one of the markers with his right hand, while keeping a half slice of sandwich in his left. I want to be X's, so you can go first. I think that's fair. Okay, that works for me. You prepared to note down your first move, your marker hovering over the paper. We actually get to play tic-tac-toe! Ooh-hoo-hoo-hoo! Oh. After the first round, you were about to take another bite of your sandwich when a thought occurred to you. I wonder if anyone turned off the TV downstairs. The TV. It was on earlier, but no one was really watching. Then everyone started leaving the living room. I know I didn't turn it off. It might still be on downstairs with no one there. Oh, if you were like crushes, you would get a super cute moment here too. Aw. Well, I just picked Fond for this, but it'd be a different game, but I won't spoil. Fair enough. Like 20 questions or something. Or is it tic-tac-toe with like X's and hearts or something? That'll be for your next run in 3 years. I won't say? Okay, fair enough. Just super, super adorable. Alright. And it makes your heart melt. Fair enough. Now I'm curious. Cove smiled crookedly at that. Poor show. Playing with no one around to enjoy it. What was it? You squinted off into the middle distance, trying to recall the show's name. Then maybe Romance Run next time. I feel like it was some kind of crime-solving drama. Cove nodded sleepily. His eyes closed, then opened again with some effort. He's gonna be sleeping when we get back, isn't he? Can you give any specifics? Maybe I can guess it. Well, you rested your chin on your open palm, groggily thinking as hard as you could. I remember there was a woman with long, blonde hair, I think. She was the one solving crimes, like as a detective or something. There were scenes in a police station. 'Cause someone got arrested? You lapsed into silence, the both of you thoughtful. Then Cove chuckled. It wasn't that funny, but you joined in the laughter anyway. I don't know what it is. Me neither, and I just saw it. We get to go again. Another round came and went, and Cove grumbled as he readjusted himself. His features were twisted in a grimace. I feel so sticky. Ugh, I'm gonna be stuck on this floor forever now. Oh no. You have to stay here. I'll have to charge you rent. You can be my new roomie. And they were roommates. Woohoo! Looks like we'll both be stuck here forever then. I'm sticky too. They were roommates. Yeah. I'll probably do this one. Looks like we'll both be stuck here forever then. I'm sticky too. Even when we're gray and old, we'll still be right here. Yeah, we have to accept our fate. You giggled under your breath at such a bizarre scenario. Cove cracked a smile as well. Then you returned to the game. I never remember the right strategy for this. Oh, wait, I've already got it. Oh. Cove spoke up once more, catching your attention. He was peering down at the piece of paper between you, his expression thoughtful. Yeah, I'm sorry. You know, tic-tac-toe is such a weird name for a game. What does it even mean? I'll have to look it up later. Maybe I'll do that too. That said, the two of you turned your attention back to the game. Bink. Bink. Ah! Oh, you won. Were you even trying? Not really. He smiled at you in an amused way. You somehow weren't surprised by that, despite Cove being the one who suggested the game in the first place. He started to yawn, his hand coming up to cover his mouth. Yawns always get me. Ugh. It quickly transitioned into a small laugh. You understood why. Yawning just as he said he was feeling disinterested was kind of a funny coincidence. You laughed along with Cove. Cove just grinned and flopped onto his back, leaving his marker on the floor beside him. You stayed seated, looking your friend over as he stretched himself out. Okay then. You really are so tall now. Cove snickered a bit at the random topic. He propped himself up onto his elbows to meet your gaze. Why are you even bringing that up? He's tall, him handsome, him baby girl. You shrugged. It made perfect sense to you to bring it up. My moms were talking about me and Elizabeth growing up, getting bigger and stuff. He's perfect. What kind of stuff? Well, Mom only likes women, and Ma likes women too, but not just women. Yeah? Since the two of you were engaged in conversation, Cove got back into a sitting position. He brought a knee up and rested his arm atop it. A wistful expression overtook his face. I wonder when I'll know how I feel about that kind of thing. You don't know? Cove shook his head. I've heard at some point you're supposed to start liking types of people. Guys or girls or whoever. But I haven't. Nothing's changed. Maybe I have to grow up more. Maybe you just don't like anybody. Or maybe you like all types of people. That's normal too. And Potato again with the chaotic positive commentary. Indeed. We love it. We appreciate it. Heck yeah. Cove seemed to appreciate that thought, if the smile that appeared on his lips was any indication. This is the sickness speaking. Oh, are you not feeling well? My body is bashed, sick and broken, but we ball. and we will ball for the gym. Aw, thank you, Potato. I hope you feel better soon. Cold, flu. What's going on? We will ball for our dearest baby girl, Cove. Okay, what about you? Who do you like? And our dearest bird as well. Indeed. He turned his attention to you, looking encouraging. Starting to have physical attraction, only seemed to feel in specific cases and situations. Didn't really have interest. Didn't think you could tell. Well, what age was this? This was... We're 13 in this step? You didn't think you could tell if you had an interest in people physically. You were starting to have romantic attraction in a general way. But specifically, when it came to how you felt towards boys, you found them attractive. You thought you'd be happy with a guy someday. And how you felt towards girls. Got a cold and had to help move a bunch of stuff so you're sore. Oh no. It's the worst when you have to do work when you're sick. Yikes. I agree with Sky. Get well soon. Make sure to rest up, drink lots of water, eat properly, relax, take medication if needed, take care of yourself. For people who aren't exclusively... I didn't know about this type of stuff when I was 13. It wasn't really in my circles of understanding. So I'll go with this because I have no idea. You returned your attention to Cove. He was waiting patiently for your response. You explained how you felt. He nodded understandingly at your attempt to describe how you felt. Then he scratched the back of his head, sheepish. I'm not really sure how we ended up talking about all that when we just started out playing tic-tac-toe. When I was 13, I just rode bikes and thought the moon was made of cheese. Mood. Very similar for me, yeah. But it was good, I think. You just nodded quietly. Cove chuckled a little bashfully. He glanced around, clearly scrambling for something else to say. I also did the crushed up water bottles in the wheel. It'd make a neat click noise. Ah, yeah, like how some people would put cards to make it sound like a motorcycle, or like you mentioned, the water bottle just to to make a noise. Yeah. I don't think I ever did that, but it sounded fun. If you had a really different experience at 13. Bottles made it more like a motorcycle? Cards more clicks. Ah, okay. Like I said, I never tried it myself. Cove chuckled a little bashfully. He glanced around, clearly scrambling for something else to say. So, have you read any new books lately? Yeah, actually. I'm really glad you brought it up. The conversation took a lighter turn after that, and it felt like you got closer that afternoon. Finally, the blazing sun began to set. To your relief, the air cooled down a bit as a result. You pulled yourself off the floor, as did Cove, with some minor complaint. You both stretched your arms, groaning, and yawned into your hands. You glanced out your window briefly, taking in the soft reds, pinks, and purples of the late afternoon sky. Somehow, you had made it through the scorching hot day in one piece. Cove turned towards you, motioning towards your window with his chin. Want to go outside? It might be better out there than it is here now. Sounds good. I could really use some fresh air. The two of you took your time heading downstairs. You stopped briefly to grab a drink of water, then continued on your way. You stepped outside, one after the other, your destination being the familiar hills behind your house. This time of day, it was quiet outside. The flowers blew gently in the wind, petals trembling but stubbornly hanging in there. You felt the breeze cool your heated skin, and you relaxed your shoulders. Cove closed his eyes, releasing a deep breath. I really love it out here. I do too. Cove smiled. Tendrils of his hair danced with the wind. A beat passed, but his gaze didn't stray from your own. His voice was impossibly soft when he spoke up again. Ooh-hoo-hoo. I'm glad I met you, Gemstone. You're really important to me, you know? That's so nice of you to say. You smiled silently. Oh. He's so yeah. You're special to me, Cove. Your voice came out equally delicate. From the way his features brightened, though, you knew he heard you. Dies of diabetes caused by the sweetness. Ah! Then Cove rested an arm on one of your shoulders, leaning against you. Even as the sun disappeared completely and the sky darkened, you and Cove remained side by side for as long as you possibly could. This was a good one to do right before the end. Heck yeah, that was so cute. Alrighty, road trip time. Also, I'm not working today, so we don't have to rush anything. Maybe we'll even go a bit longer. We'll find out. Now, since you aren't on Crush, you probably won't get a cute moment. Aw, man. But at least some variation of it. Fair enough. I made my choice, and I shall enjoy whatever cuteness I acquire. Even though you were awake, the sun had barely peeked its head above the horizon, and the sky above was still dark, though lightening by the minute. Usually you wouldn't be up so early, especially during summer vacation, but today was different. Today, instead of the lazy days you were used to, everything around you was a flurry of activity, as both your family and Cove's prepared for what lay ahead. Because parked in the street just outside your house was a massive RV camper, so big you couldn't even see Cove's house behind it. His parents had rented the RV for a few days to take him on a short road trip to see the Redwood National Park. You glanced at Cove, who was standing nearby, taking in the scene in front of him. RV trips sound so fun. There's been so many around town lately. It's crazy. The prospect of the trip had to be a mixed bag for him, but it was only 3 days, so it seemed like he was dealing with it as best as he could. Especially now that you and your family were joining them. You weren't sure how exactly it had happened. You knew your parents and Cove spoke to each other often, and somewhere along the way, plans were made after Cliff offered to share the space. The parents all thought it was a fantastic idea. You had already gotten a good look inside while you were helping to load everything in, and you had to admit that while it was a really big car, fitting that many people inside was going to be snug. Yeah, because it's 4 adults and 3 children. Unless Elizabeth opted out, but I don't know if our moms would let her. Move it or lose it, kiddo. 3 goblins, yeah. Mom bustled past with a cooler in one hand and a large bottle of water under the other. She was upbeat for this early in the morning. Speaking of water, quick hydration break, everybody. A starch and hydrate break. You know what I just thought of? You know how there's like a be right back screen and stuff? I just want like a little hydration animation to play when we go on hydration breaks. That would be funny. Hydration, you mean coffee? No, that's not hydration. Aww. Ma, however, seemed to be on the other side of the wavelength. She followed behind her wife, dragging her feet on every step. Hydration, you mean motor oil potato? Speaking of coffee, I'm going to need a whole jug of coffee once we hit the road. Okay. I get really excited for trips, so I'm probably raring to go as your mom. Because I'm not really a morning person, but also for trips, I will be. For trips, I will be for one day. As raring to go as your mom. You stretched your arms out and took in some deep breaths. The air was still a little damp from dew, but you didn't mind it. Morning summer air is amazing. Like before it gets humid, when it's just a little bit damp, like and cool. Oh, man. And then at the end of the chain came your sister. She had a bone to pick before the trip officially started. Her rattling off critiques added some level of normalcy to everything new going on. I don't get why I can't sleep in the bed tonight. Gemstone is the youngest, and I'll never fall asleep in that loft. We're trying to make things fair on everyone. If you want to play the older card, you should be offering to take the loft both nights. It's important for big siblings to make sacrifices for their younger ones. Elizabeth huffed, not happy with that answer in the slightest, and folded her arms, leaning back against the side of the RV. Personally, I would love the loft. Me and my siblings would probably argue over it because it's the most unique. The trip plans had been nailed down prior, the sleeping arrangements included. Elizabeth still held on to her objections with them. There was a main area of the RV with a couch, loft, and some floor space. At the end of the car was a room with a large bed. Your moms were sharing the bed. Kyra was on the couch. The father and son intended to sleep on the floor. Oh, boys on the floor. The adults determined you and Elizabeth would switch between the small loft above the driver's seat and sharing the bed with moms. Oh, if it was sharing the bed with moms, I would definitely much prefer the loft. Loft, please. Yeah. Well, Cove can sleep in the loft too. Cuddles? No! We're just 13. We're just little guys. I mean, that's kind of the only way it would work. So I don't think I can think it's unfair so much. Get that boy a blanket, some hot cocoa, and make them babies smash teeth. No! Potato! Full goblin mode potato right now. This game. Alright, yeah, I mean, he kinda has to, based on how things work, so you were excited to sleep in the loft. It would be a new experience for you, and sounded kind of cool. I am the truth. Alright, you lot. Does everyone have everything they need? Wait, Elizabeth would prefer to sleep in the bed? With the moms? Fair enough, everybody has their own comfort levels, I guess. Can I have the loft both nights? And then Elizabeth can have the bed, so I don't have to share the bed? I'd much rather sleep alone in the loft. Does everyone have everything they need? We're heading out in 5 minutes. Now's the time to double check. You don't want to forget something important. At the word, Elizabeth yelped and dashed back into the house, her bedhead hair bouncing behind her as she went. Ma came over and gave you a smile, settling her hands on her hips. How about you, Gemstone? Do you have all your clothes packed? Toiletries, deodorant, floss? Anything else you can think of? I always have to run back inside for something. I check, I double check, I triple check, and then I still have to go back inside for something. I rarely forget things, but I often have to make a couple return trips. Oh, you had to run back inside for something. Probably my book. Oh, yeah, that's a valid one. Sprinting up the stairs to the bathroom, you grabbed your toothbrush from beside the sink before heading back down. You were glad you were reminded to grab it after having a You were glad you were reminded to grab it after having left it out to use this morning. It would have been embarrassing if you couldn't brush your teeth for the next few days. I finished packing a week early. Well, I think I finished packing a week early, and I have everything gathered, but then I always forget like a book or a water bottle or something that I meant to bring last minute inside, so I have to run in. Your mom was still there, waiting with a knowing expression as you walked out again. You guys pack things. Got everything now, Gemstone? Yeah. With a few minutes left to spare before leaving, you mentally went over what you had packed for the trip. Clothes, a pillow and blanket, usual day-to-day gear for most people. You also had some more personal things, such as your favorite stuffed animal. Without fail, it always made you feel more comfortable whenever you went somewhere new. Even now, if I go on a trip, Christmas dog you is coming with me. It was like taking a little piece of home away with you. Couple things to read. You had packed one of your old favorites, and a new one you'd never tried before. Very smart move, very smart. You knew you'd have plenty of time for them both on such a long drive. Pencils and paper. You had to be prepared in case you saw something to sketch at the park, or if you had to write anything down, or if you needed to pass the time just doodling. A ball. It was fun to break out a ball to play around with in the field behind your house, so you thought everyone might enjoy having something to do while at the park. Your camera. It was just a little pocket camera you had gotten from your mom's, but you couldn't miss the opportunity to take some new snaps. An MP3 player with headphones. With so much time going to be spent driving in a car, you wanted to make sure you'd be able to have some music to put on. And that was everything. Hey, let me lift that up for you, Gemstone. I'll stow it in the RV. There's a few spots left it'll fit. You let Kyra take your bag and gave her a grateful smile. With nothing left to do, you watched the others getting ready for the trip. Kyra and Cliff seemed to have the most energy out of anyone. They were finishing packing the suitcases away, while your moms had gone to lock up the house. They high-fived whenever another one got crammed into the storage compartments of the vehicle. Even though your own parents were more low-key than Cove's, you could tell they were both excited for the trip. It had been a while since your family had been away anywhere together. Elizabeth skipped towards the RV, a bag slung over her shoulder, and you were surprised to see she seemed more optimistic about the whole ordeal now. Usually, she wasn't the one to exit the confines of her room, unless it was for TV or food, or to leave her family behind to be with friends. You would have thought 3 whole days packed in an RV with 6 others would be too much for her, but it was a nice surprise. You supposed any vacation was better than no vacation in her mind. Cove had been pretty quiet so far, and, more than anything, seemed to be overwhelmed by the situation. You were excited for the trip, too. It was great to get away and explore new places. Soon the miscellaneous remaining tasks had all been wrapped up. Ooh, new interior! This is so cool. Yeah, this would be so fun to sleep in. Are you kidding? Heck yeah. Everyone piled into the RV. It was officially time for the trip to start. And it did. Cliff took the first shift driving. He cautiously navigated the massive car out of the narrow neighborhood streets. It was touch and go for the first part of the journey. Your moms and Kyra were all huddled at the front, trying to get a view of how much space they had on each side. There was a sense of relief when the first long leg of the trip was hit, and the RV would only need to go down one stretch of highway for miles. The mom group cleared out of the driver's area, leaving Cove's dad to it, taking more comfortable seats around the main cabin. You felt like you could finally relax now, too. Time slipped by as morning faded away. Before you realized it, the engine of the RV came to a stop, but only halted for a few moments as Cliff climbed out from the driver's seat and Mom took over. Ma was sitting shotgun, giving Mom a quick tutorial on the controls, as it was her first time driving anything this large. Cliff groaned as he headed towards the rest of you, stretching his arms above his head and loosening up his muscles. We're making good progress. Yeah, maybe you should take a nap in the back for a while. It was a long haul you just did, and I know you're on less sleep than usual. Cliff waved a hand, that trademark grin of his slipping into place. I don't need sleep. I still got a few miles in the old tank. He flexed an arm, showing off his muscles to drive the point about how resilient he was home, and Kyra rolled her eyes in amusement. Dad, everybody has to sleep. Cove groaned at the tough guy act, though Cliff simply chuckled and ruffled his son's hair. Are you going to be driving again anytime soon, Mr. Holden? I want to know so I can prepare. Did anyone pack some rope? I might need it. There's no seatbelts up here. Elizabeth called down from where she was lounging in the loft above the driving compartment. I don't know if that's safe while we're going, but fair enough. I would also probably want to do that. She was laying on her back, her hair falling over the side and swinging around as the RV started up again and took off down the road. A bag of potato chips was balanced on Elizabeth's stomach, and she tossed a couple in her mouth right as Cliff held a hand to his chest, pretending to be offended by the remark. Oh. Kyra laughed lightheartedly. Lucky for all of us, we have enough adults to cover the shifts today. He won't be driving again until tomorrow. Oh, these are all funny. Just enough time to write out my last will and testament. You stayed quiet. You didn't have anything to add to the conversation, but it was pretty funny all the same. Mom then shouted back in her seat to join in the conversation, a playful smile tilting her lips. What I'm more worried about is this old monster getting us there and back again before falling apart. It looks as though it was built in the early 90s. It must be older than some of the occupants. That's just the aesthetic of the decor. It's not that old, I think. Did you ask what year the model was before you rented it? Kyra wrinkled her nose in thought. Yes, I did. I just can't remember what the answer was. Cliff chuckled at her, while the rest of you let out a collective sigh. The RV lurched a little as it picked up speed, and you held on to the ladder to the loft to keep your balance. You felt something graze the top of your head before a weight settled on your gold hair. When you tilted your chin up to carefully look, you heard the rustling of the bag of chips, and realized Elizabeth had rested the end of it on your head. She gestured to the opening, silently offering to share her snack. Aww. Big sibling energy, just put it on your head. You took a small handful. Reaching up, you scooped up some chips. After that, the weight of the packet left your scalp. You happily munched away as the conversation continued on, and you got closer and closer to your destination. The day flew by, with the group of you chatting, playing games, and passing the time together, before finally arriving at the park and setting up for the night. Now I want snackies? Yeah, chip time. Ma was closing the windows while everyone got ready for bed, saying goodnight to the others as she made her way to the back room. You all had dinner together while still driving, and some hours after you had arrived at your destination and found a spot to park in for the rest of your stay. Giving a look across the front of the RV, you noticed almost everyone there was already dozing off where they were, with Cove having completely fallen asleep curled up in the passenger's seat. Oh, that's so cute. He must have done so while Kyra was driving the last leg, and they had decided not to disturb him. Kyra herself was the only one up there who was still awake, flipping through a magazine next to a portable light from her spot on the couch. It seemed Mr. Holden needed to sleep, despite his claims. You followed your moms into the back room and closed the door behind you before crawling into the bed between them. Between them? No! Ugh, I'd so much rather be in the loft right now. It was a queen-size bed, so there was enough space for the three of you together without too much squishing. Get a good rest, Gemstone. We've got a big day ahead of us tomorrow. I'm looking forward to the bushwalk in the morning. It's been a long time since I was out in nature like this. It better be a queen-size bed, 'cause you're all queens. Aw, Potato. It's been a long time since I was out in nature like this. There'll be plenty for us to see. You stayed awake for a little longer while your moms whispered about the park and forests in general. With the sound of their voices in the background, eventually you nodded off to sleep. Ah. The next morning you were up bright and early, preparing for the day ahead. You had an okay sleep. It was nothing compared to your bed at home, but at least you didn't have to sleep on the floor, so you couldn't complain too much. Sleeping on the floor is fun. Fight me. Anyway. Ma whined a bit about the firmness of the mattress, but Mom had only encouraged her to enjoy the trip while she could. While looking for a spot to get ready, you had some trouble finding a space of your own, as the others were doing the same thing. Cove was perched on top of the counter, brushing his hair and tucking up his legs every time someone wanted to move past. The parents were checking, double-checking, and triple-checking that you had everything, to the point where you had stopped listening to them altogether. You knew you wouldn't be returning to the RV at all that day, but by the look of the backpacks that were packed up and ready to go, you doubted anything was missing from them. It didn't take much longer until you all exited the RV in a bustle and headed into the Redwood National Park. Ooh, this is so pretty. Look at this art. It looks like an anime. Oh, that's a fun color. Cove had his head tilted up towards the canopy of trees, his eyes wide as they looked in the massive as he took in the massive trunks on either side of you. Don't laugh at him. He's just a little adorable guy with this adorable jacket. It's just like, it's very bright. I'm gonna leave it at that. You knew that the redwood trees were considered the tallest trees on Earth, but you weren't prepared for exactly how huge they would be in person. Smile, you two! You spun just in time for Kyra to snap a picture of you and Cove together, before she pointed her camera at Cliff, trying to get a shot despite his weak protests that she should just enjoy the moment. It's 'cause he's very bright. Valid. Your parents were walking behind the group a little, with Mom telling Ma some more information she had read about the park in a brochure. Ma listened happily while looking around and taking in the sights, every now and then asking a question or making a joke about something Mom had said. You smiled at them, thinking your mom must have read a lot of pamphlets to know so much about the park. Maybe you should come and work here as a tour guide if you know so much about the place, Elizabeth teased, earning a squeeze on the nose from your mom. She seemed to be enjoying herself, but you thought that might just be because she was amused by everyone else's reactions. Oh. You were in awe of the redwood trees. Surrounding you on either side, the enormous trees shot up into the sky, the sunlight peeking through their canopy and speckling the path in front of you. The sheer size of the redwoods made you feel like a tiny ant bustling along through the forest. The adults had decided on some casual nature walks rather than any serious hiking, and you strolled along at your own pace, taking in the scenery. Elizabeth sped up a little, smirking at Cove as she fell into place between the two of you. And immediately you could tell by her expression she was gonna say something taunting. Is she gonna comment on his jacket? No, okay. I can't believe our families are actually on vacation together. She threw her arms out, speaking with a genuine sense of bewilderment. I would have joked about something like this happen, but now I'm not sure I want to give them any more ideas. Cove ignored her completely and continued walking along. Just watch. Next year they'll be talking about their next new amazing idea. She put on a fake voice, deeper than her own. We should just sell both our houses and move in together. Think of how much we'd save on the mortgage. It was clear that Elizabeth was being sarcastic. Cove simply shook his head, not really bothered by her. You supposed he was used to it by this point. But seriously, they really do act like we're a single family, just because we live across the street from each other. That is called a good friendship. Be so appreciative of that. That's so rare. It's so rare. Love it. Cherish it. Oh, man. Elizabeth gave you and Cove a look, her eyes glinting with mischief as she leered at you. Maybe one day we will be related. Legally, anyway. She said it as though she was a gossipy old lady. Maybe. I guess you and me could get married, Elizabeth. Next step, I pray. On my hands and knees praying. Me? Yeah. That way Gemstone could be my sister-in-law. That would be fun. Elizabeth stuck out her tongue at Cove, as if the very idea were ridiculous. I'll marry you, Cove. Come on, say it. We both know. Should I? It feels out of the blue. I've been kind of passive. I know that you want me to. I'm looking for someone with an unbiased opinion. Wholeheartedly. Anyone else? Second opinions? I appreciate your opinion, but I know what you want. I'm just making sure. Go for it. Okay, I have approval. I'll marry you, Cove. We must unite our family ties to increase our pull in the community. Thank you, Sky. If I could buy you bagels. If I could, I'd buy you bagels. A political marriage. It might be all right with you. Then it's an agreement. Oh, they're so cute. Elizabeth poked out her tongue at both of you, giving you a sour look. She walked ahead, obviously not getting the responses she was looking for, and you and Cove swapped amused looks. This is what we call foreshadowing. The day continued on, with plenty to see and experience. You passed a few different activities that you would have liked to try out if you had the time, such as kayaking and rock climbing, but Ma said that it would have to wait for another trip. There was a little stream during the walk that you sat beside and set out a picnic for lunch, nibbling on a selection of fruit, sandwiches, and chips. Oh, that sounds so nice. I want to go exploring now. Various birds flew by overhead, and you made a game out of guessing the species that were hanging out in the trees nearby. You even managed to get a couple of them right, including the kingfisher that grabbed half of Cliff's sandwich. Oh my goodness. Of course. You were glad you got to do this in the end. It was definitely a special experience, and one you'd remember for a long time to come. You smiled to yourself, committing the sights and sounds to memory. Your group made it back to camp just as the sun was setting in the sky, and the stars were appearing one by one. Everyone had enjoyed different parts of it most. You traded stories of what you thought while you were eating dinner. Then afterwards you pitched in to help clean up. You, along with Elizabeth and Cove, got to head back to the RV early and spend some time together while the parents stayed outside longer. Parenty chatting. It was nice to have the space to yourselves after the cramped journey there. Cramped journey there. And while Elizabeth had locked herself in the back room with her headphones, you and Cove were left in the main lounge area. Sorry, everyone. I can speak and read. And, think. I promise. Anyway. You hung out with Cove. We might as well get comfortable. Who knows how long they'll be out for? Parent chats. You took a seat on the sofa, while Cove sat down on the other end, tapping his fingers against his knees. You know, I hardly ever see you wearing a jacket, especially in summer. Oh yeah, I like wearing as few layers as possible. It's easier that way. I'd rather be cold than extra hot, and it's kind of a pain to carry extra clothes around. My parents made me bring this jacket. It's me! It's me! Cove is me! I relate so deeply to this guy. Wee, autism. Hehehe. I'm the same way. They're bulky and heavy, and they usually make me feel too warm. Cove smiled lightly at you and nodded. I've noticed. You asked him what he liked to see others wear. Hey, what kind of things do you think are nice to see on another person? Cove's eyes widened at the question, and his defensive reply seemed to slip out before he'd had the chance to have a proper think about it. Nothing. I found it funny. That was funny. You laughed out loud, and Cove gave you a dry look. That's not what I meant. You composed yourself and sat up straighter, all traces of laughter disappearing from your face. Aw, he blushes. Answer with what you mean, then. Isn't there anything at all you think looks good when you see it on someone? Cove mumbled under his breath, and you couldn't quite catch the words. He was having a difficult time with the subject. So you both want to take clothes off. Sky! You guys are incorrigible. It was a topic that made him uncomfortable, so you let it go. You didn't want to push him any further, so you didn't insist. The parents all arrived soon after, each of them climbing into the RV and finding some place to sit down and rest their legs. Elizabeth, having heard the commotion, came out from the room for the first time since arriving and joined you all. You spent the evening chatting and playing a few games, enjoying the last evening of the trip together. Bedtime arrived within the blink of an eye. As the group hunkered down for the night, your mom did a final round to be sure nothing had been left behind. She explained that Cliff was going to start driving early in the morning, like on the first day, but would be letting everyone else in the group sleep. There wouldn't be a need for all of them to get up. Now was the time to check you hadn't left anything outside. You, as well as everyone else, were confident you had it all packed up inside the RV, which meant it was time to get some rest before the journey home tomorrow. Your moms and Elizabeth said goodnight, heading to the back room, while you climbed up to the loft. And I thought I was meant to be the looter, but they're already lewd enough, SMH. Oh man. Cove and his family got situated below in the previously set arrangement. You tried to get comfortable as a million thoughts were running through your mind. It was hard to believe that the trip was practically over, and before you knew it, you'd be back in your own bed at home. You enjoyed this mini-adventure. It was short, that was for sure, but you got to see and do so much during your time here. All in all, it was a nice break away from home. The minutes ticked by silently. It didn't take long for the soft snores of Cliff and Kyra to drift up to you. They were asleep now. You wondered if Cove was still awake, and decided to poke your head out from the loft to find out. You blinked through the dark. Is his face right there? Oh, okay. You looked down the hall. Looking down the hall, you noticed Cove laying on his back, his eyes staring straight up at the ceiling. His seafoam hair was spread out on his sleeping bag. He must have felt you watching him, because suddenly his eyes locked on yours. It was difficult to see much in the dim light, but you could make out the crooked smile on his face well enough. You grinned back at him. Or you waved at him? You waved at him. Cove waved back, still smiling at you through the dim light. If I'm not traveling alone, I'm waiting to get back home from day one. Aww. Not a fan of group traveling. It can't be a lot. Understandable. Have fun. Gesture for him to come over. We're not gonna do that. That's boring. This is the last night of a vacation trip. You then decided to have fun quietly. Oh. Alone? I gestured for him to come over. Cove looked unsure about it, but you were happy to see him slowly start to sit up anyway. His sleeping bag rustled as he moved, though he tried to go slow, and froze up like a deer in headlights every time he made a sound, watching his parents for any sign of movement. Cuddle bugs. Eventually he managed to maneuver around his sleeping dad and make it to the ladder, standing on the bottom rung where he looked up at you and whispered, "What? Hi." Cove shook his head in disbelief, but you could see the hint of a smile peeking out. "Good night, Gemstone." Aw. He turned right around and crept back to his spot on the floor. You laid down, shuffling onto your back and looking up at the rivets set in the roof of the RV through the dark. Should I go back and invite him up? Do you want to come up? His eyes widened, just so. You could only tell because he had come to where you were. Cove glanced behind him quickly at his sleeping parents before turning back to you. Okay. You broke out into a grin and scooched back as far as you could, making space for Cove to crawl in. He was very tall, so it wasn't a great fit for him, but he managed to squeeze himself in. Luckily, you were short enough to leave him some room. Literally. Ah! You laid down next to each other on your sides, face to face. He got under the blanket a bit. Oh ho ho! I see why it dies, is there? One of his arms was nestled under his head for comfort. The other had nowhere to go, and was rested alongside his chest on the floor of the loft. Cove spoke to you softly. Oh my gosh. Yeah, this is so cute. Oh, this art is beautiful. He looks so soft. What am I doing here? Sky, one day if you ever play this, you need to tell me how it was for you. He is so soft. I thought we could hang out. Aw, don't look so disappointed. Cove's eyebrows dipped. He probably thought you had something more important than that going on. It isn't a big deal for us both to be in the loft, right? Yeah, we always share. I like that. Usually they're also happy about it. Oh wait, no, I haven't gotten this far in my 17th run. I gotta look away, no spoilers. Oh no. Cove gestured in the direction of his parents, and you nodded in agreement. They had always tried to put you and Cove together, ever since you were little. I wonder how much trouble we'll be in if we get caught. Get caught doing what? We're just hanging out. Best buds. It wouldn't be nearly as much as we would have been if my moms had found out you snuck into my room for the night at the early start of summer. What? It wouldn't be nearly as much as we would have been in if my moms found out you snuck into my room for the night at the start of summer. He winced just imagining it. I still can't believe I did that, and didn't get caught. It was a very dramatic morning. You could easily picture his frantic escape in your mind's eye. You're kind of a troublemaker, aren't you, Cove? No, I don't think so. Cove trailed off, and he seemed to be lost in his own thoughts. Well, maybe sometimes. Cove smiled fondly at you, and you grinned triumphantly. You spent the rest of the night smooshed up in the little loft together, whispering about your past memories and trying not to giggle too loud at the silly things you had gotten up to together over the years. Eventually, the chatting trailed off, and when you noticed Cove had drifted off to sleep, you followed soon after. When you woke up the next morning, it was to the rumble of the RV as it traveled the long journey home. You were kind of a bad boy. Jem's the baddest. What did I do? You noticed quickly that you weren't as warm as you had been during the night, and when you checked next to you, Cove was gone. Aw, we weren't as warm. That's why evil Jem is so nice. Blinking sleepily, you peeked over the edge of the loft to find out where he had gone. Maybe he had snuck back to his spot on the floor during the night? However, you soon noticed him sitting on the couch talking quietly with his mom, his head hung in embarrassment. Your movement gave you away, and Kyra suddenly looked up and caught your eye. Oh no. Oh, I'm getting like the feeling in the pit of my stomach that's like, oh no, I did something wrong. She simply smiled amusedly at you, and it was obvious what happened. Cove hadn't gotten away with it. They found him there in the loft, and then you woke up while he was trying to explain. You knew it was going to be a long, long time before you lived this one down. If you ever did. Soon, your moms and Elizabeth emerged from their rooms, dressed and ready for the day of travel. You spent most of the day hanging out together in the RV, savoring the last few hours of vacation. Kyra suggested a few different travel games she used to play with Cove when he was younger, and you all had a great time competing against each other. A little later in the day, you tried to talk to Cove about what happened in the loft, but he simply apologized and changed the subject. No, don't feel bad about it. It was a bit too much for him to try speaking on, especially right now. You understood. Yeah, that's fair enough. When the RV finally pulled onto your street, it was well into the night, and you were looking forward to crawling into your own bed after the last few days away. That will set you one on the road of romance? Ooh. Then it was a good choice. I'm sorry for bugging so much, but I must dream. All good. You're not bugging. This is fun. Everyone else must have been feeling the same, because it was mutually agreed that unpacking and cleaning the RV would wait until morning. Once home again, you went straight up to your room and dropped onto your bed, shoes and all. It was only a 3-day trip, which is pretty short. I do tend to have a lot of like post-trip sadness. You wished you were still on the trip. There was so much more you wanted to see and do, and being away from home had a special kind of feeling to it. It was sad that it ended. With those last few thoughts drifting through your mind, it wasn't long before you dozed off to sleep. Tomorrow, life would go on like normal. Ah yes, like normal. Oh, we finished the summer! What is this? Ah, more DLC. Woohoo! Cries. There's so much DLC. And then, summer ended. Yes. There was no denying it. Today was the very last day of summer. Okay, so that DLC with the arrows is Derek DLC? Ah, the rest on the bottom is just normal Cove DLC. Good to know. There was no denying it. Today was the very last day of summer. Tomorrow you are heading to class. Your feelings were muddled. There were aspects of going to school that you missed, and others you would happily live without. If only you could pick and mix between bits of summer and school. You got dressed, not envisaging? What? I don't know what this means, but contemplating what lay ahead of you tomorrow. Life was going to be a bit different. You had come to think of the summer vacation as the norm, but school sucked up the majority of the year, whereas summer vacation was just a respite in the middle. So rather than it being different, it was kind of a return to the normal? What did your normal life really mean? You considered how fondly your moms talked about their summer vacations as kids. You dimly recognized that one year, the pattern of school and summer itself would be over for good. It was hard to imagine. You'd gotten distracted, one arm still out of his sleeve. You pulled it through and put your mind back to the present. This season had brought about plenty of changes of its own, like Kyra's visit, though that too was coming to an end today. You were happy you'd finally gotten the chance to know her. She was interesting to be around. You liked how easy it was to talk to her. You finished dressing, which was good. Cove would be there any moment. You'd agreed to see his mom off together. Officially, the plan was that he would come over to bring you round to his house when she was ready to set off. But you both knew that you'd be hanging out for at least a little while beforehand. Kyra's visit had troubled Cove when it first happened. It had been a sudden change, thanks to Mr. Holden's infamous tendency to surprise people, but once he was able to adjust, he'd been in pretty good spirits with her around. It was a relief for everyone. The next thought that crossed your mind was... You couldn't wait to see Cove, so you went downstairs to meet him when he arrived. You bounded down the stairs, your hand gliding over the rail. You wanted to make sure you got there first. If you didn't hurry, your moms might answer it. It was only a few minutes later when the doorbell rang. As you'd chosen to stand beside it to wait for Cove, there was no delay in pulling it open. We're just standing right there holding the door handle. Ding dong opens. Cove was there, just as you'd expected. Seeing you, he smiled quietly. Hi, Cove. Come on in. Once he'd stepped inside, you beckoned for him to follow you upstairs. Back up in your room, you sat down on your bed and waited for Cove to settle in as you knew he would. With other guests, you might have offered them a seat, but you and Cove were long past those tentative stages of friendship. Your room was as familiar to him as his own. Oh? I'm just kidding. You watched as Cove sat down in your desk chair, his preferred spot. You rolled it closer to the bed to make it easier to chat, tweaking the angles so that he was facing you fully. Once happy with the position, he leaned in towards you, his hands held in his lap. His actions weren't the ones of someone who planned on moving from his spot anytime soon, even though you had an appointment to keep together that day. When is your mom leaving? We've got some time. She's still got a shower and stuff before she goes. She didn't want me to just keep hanging around while she was doing that. He lifted his head, his gaze drifting out through the window, and chuckled. I can't believe she's already leaving, just when I'm getting used to her being there every day. He leaned back in the chair, a wry smile tickling his cheeks. You nodded. He shook his head a bit, as if shaking off the topic like a dog whipping off water following a dip in the sea. Cove perched an elbow on the chair's arm and propped his jaw against his curled hand. There was a natural ease to his movements, a familiarity from the echoes of all the times before when he'd sat in that same position. This was a really nice summer. I'm glad we got to spend so much time together. Cove, still nestled cozily in your chair, smiled at your response. How are your fish doing? Really good. Things in the tank are stable, and everybody looks healthy. That was nice to hear. You'd learned from Cove how hard it was to maintain an aquarium. Ladybug has been busy. Keeps darting between the plants and out again when I walk by, like a game of peekaboo. Or hide and seek. Yeah. Cove idly glanced out of the window. He gave a resigned sigh. It's gonna be harder to surf, with school, it getting colder out. I don't want to get rusty. I like surfing, but I wish they liked me. I can't stick to the board. He gave a light smile, coupled with a shrug as response. Gemstone, Cove! The sudden call from downstairs caught you both unaware. You'd nearly forgotten the world outside your room. From the guilty look on his face, Cove had done the same. Just had a call. Cove's mom is ready to go. If you're quick, she might keep the mandated motherly smothering to a minimum. You doubted that, but it was nice that Mom and Mrs. Priest had their strange sense of humor in common. Your eyes met Cove's. Wordlessly, you headed downstairs together. Each step on the way there was painfully slow, like he was trying to delay the inevitable. I mean, yeah, this must be really hard for him. His whole body tensed leaving the house, and Cove froze altogether before you could both cross the street. The door's open. Dad must be taking her stuff out. Oh, he swallowed hard. She's really gonna leave. Is he comfortable with touch now? I don't know. Let's see. You rested your hand on his arm. Cove looked at you like he was hoping you had a solution for how he was feeling, and all you could do was give his arm a squeeze for support. At that, some of the conflict warring at his face eased a bit. Together, you went across the street and inside his house, finding his parents in the living room surrounded by his mom's packed things. Hey, kids. Good timing. I just called the taxi. And hi, Gemstone. I'm so glad I get to see you today. It was fabulous getting to know you this summer. I finally got to put a face to the name I've heard so many times. She winked, and Cove pouted on cue over the teasing. I'm really happy I got to meet you too. Hopefully it won't be too long before we see each other again. Nodding, Kyra turned her attention back to her boys. She patted Cliff on the arm with a warm smile, and then she enveloped Cove in a crushing hug. Initially, Cove squirmed to break free from her grip, but his mom was unfazed and kept him locked in place. Heartbeats later, he gave in and hugged her back tightly. I'm so happy this trip was a success. Cliff looked like he was bursting with pride. Well, not a 100% success, but still a passing grade, I think. Thinking back on everything that happened this summer, he started to look sheepish. Cliff scratched the side of his head, and an awkward chuckle escaped Cove. There were ways it could have gone smoother. I'm still keeping that in mind for the future. Good for you, Cliff. And I'll be trying harder to stay more in the loop. You watched as Cove smiled softly at both his parents, and you felt relieved seeing how much the whole family had come together since you first met them. Despite any underlying troubles, love was still there. After that, it wasn't long before the taxi arrived, rolling up in front of the house and in clear view of the open door. Kyra stood up, smiling sadly. That's my ride. Yeah. The matching reply got a chuckle out of Kyra as you all filed out of the house. Father and son went with Kyra's bags in hand. Once outside, you spotted your family waiting by the street, and to your surprise, Derek was also with them. He stood uncomfortably, and he waved as soon as you noticed him. Hey, Gemstone. Hi, Cove. When did you get here? My dad dropped me off just a little bit ago. Thought I could visit one more time before school started. You picked a busy time. Sorry. Derek couldn't even look at Cove. He nervously kept rolling a pebble with the bottom of his shoe. I wasn't even thinking your mom would be leaving today. I'm sorry, dude. What? You're not interrupting anything. You're always welcome here. Sorry, but I gotta go. It was so fun to watch, and thank you for the stream. No problem. Wonderful talking with you too, and I hope you have a great day or night. I hope that you have a wonderful day as well. Thank you for joining. Even though you were teasing. I'm just kidding, I appreciate it. But have a great day. Or night. I spoke the truth. Yeah. turns to fries and disappears. Magic. You're always welcome here. It would have been sad if I didn't get to say goodbye before leaving. Derek came to hang out often, so it was inevitable that the two had met at some point this season. I think so too. It was apparent Derek would have preferred to have gotten there at a more opportune moment. He never liked seeming impolite, but their reassuring words soothed his worries. Aw, what a good boy. Whoops. The tension he was holding in his body lessened, and he looked like he was feeling much more like himself. Sky! That's our friend! But I won't tell. Bye, Derek. It was fun getting to know you. Bye, ma'am. Is there anything I can do to help? Nah, don't worry yourself over that. We're just about set. In that short amount of time, Cliff had gathered and packed the bags into the trunk. Kyra took one last look at everyone and sighed. All right, I don't want to keep the driver waiting. It's time to head out. The little crowd that had formed around started their chorus of farewells and well wishes traveling, but Kyra still made no move to get into the taxi. She placed her attention on Cove. I'll call when I make it to the airport, and when I get to the airport, and when I make it to Nevada. Also, you better call the moment you walk in the door at home. Otherwise, we'll be wondering all night if you got into trouble on the way there. And could you call tomorrow too, so I can tell you how school went? Of course. I want to hear all about it. Kyra put a hand on Cove's head and affectionately ruffled his hair one last time. She then let go, only to move on to squeezing his cheeks in her hands instead. Mom. I love you so much, baby. She was chuckling by the time she freed him, and rounded things off with a small tap to the tip of his nose. Cove rubbed at his face with a grin. Finally, she walked to the car while waving, and took her seat in the taxi. Cliff hooked an arm around Cove's shoulder, and kept him close as it began to pull away. For a moment, Cove looked up at his dad, and then wrapped an arm across his back. Bye, Mom. Bye, travel safe. Kyra rolled down the window and stuck her head out of it. She waved again while blowing kisses at Cove and Cliff. See you again. Before she was out of sight, you decided to wave goodbye. As the taxi headed down the road, you stuck your hand in the air to send her off. The cab turned down another road and completely disappeared from view. Cove let go of his dad and took a few steps out into the empty street, still looking in the direction his mom went. Oh. He smiled quietly, deep in thought. You got the impression Cove was feeling better than he was earlier. He was finally content with the way things were. You jumped a bit when your mom put a hand on your shoulder, pulling you away from your thoughts. She smiled when you looked at her. This was a great vacation, huh? You nodded in agreement. Yeah, it was a good one. Cove walked back over to the group, still genuinely happy. Derek grinned at him welcomingly, and everyone else there smiled at him, even Elizabeth. Ma clapped her hands together, bringing everyone's attention back to the present. It's almost lunchtime. I think I'll put something special together. Her eyes sparkled with a plan, and Mom smiled. I bet you could use some help with that. That'd be absolutely wonderful. Derek glanced between the two, his eyebrows furrowed. Is there something I could do? Your mom's exchanged a fond expression. Ma shook her head. That's very sweet, Derek, but it's all right. It's not your job. Technically, your dad left you under Cliff's watch. You're meant to be taken care of by him, not doing chores for the neighbors. Mom laughed a little over her own joke. You watched Derek look away, discouraged. I don't mind. He was a little bashful about it. You wondered if Mom's joke had just reminded him that he wasn't initially meant to be invited to lunch. It was getting a little awkward. Mom grinned sympathetically. Her comment was meant to lighten the mood, not bring it back down. Ma tried again to get things moving forward. Why don't you kids go and have fun? You can all come back in about an hour. We'll make enough for everyone. Mom nodded in agreement. Another stunning idea, Lonnie. Thanks. That sounds like a plan then. I don't want to cramp your style. I've got some stuff to work on, so I can be out of your hair this afternoon. You should come by later too. No reason you should be the odd man out. Mom seemed amused as Cliff rubbed his neck nervously. He grinned a wavering but pleased smile.
Thanks very much.
He looked over at the assembled crowd with knowing glances. I can help too. With as many people as you're feeding, that's going to be a lot of food. Didn't you hear what we told Derek? It wouldn't be fair if we made you cook when we're the ones who are inviting you in. Ma raised an eyebrow when Cliff waved it off.
Come on.
I insist. Derek would be missing time with his pals. This would be a break for me. I'm quite the chef.
Ma and Mom exchanged further glances before Mom shrugged. An airtight argument. If you're sure, we'll be happy to have you, Chef Cliff. Cliff's grin widened, and he seemed much more hyped than you'd expect him to be about helping with lunch. Cove shook his head, a fine smile on his face. Then all of us grown-up people will be heading inside. I assume the rest of you kiddos are staying out? Maybe not all of them. Ma tilted her head, a silent question for Elizabeth. Your sister thought for a moment. I'll stay with the kids. Both your moms smiled at her, while Derek and Cove didn't seem to appreciate her phrasing. But with the plan decided, all three parents waved and headed for your house. It was just you teenagers now. Elizabeth looked at you and the others, a curious expression on her face. What now? You silently wondered if Elizabeth only stayed out with you to avoid getting roped into work. Then again, she could just genuinely want to hang out. You couldn't tell with your sister. Cove spoke up after no one else did to answer Elizabeth's question. Want to go down to the shopping street? It's been a while, and I don't think there's a lot of other things we could agree on. Yeah, sure. Sounds awesome to me. Unlike you guys, I haven't been there 1,001 times. It's new to me. Let's do it. You strolled across the road as a group, down to the beach, and then to the left. To the left? That is not how I was imagining it in my head. Anyway, it took less than 15 minutes to arrive, one of the conveniences of Sunset Bird. The four of you looked around at the familiar shops, trying to see if anything caught your attention this time. Derek was the most enthusiastic. He checked out every stall with his eyes wide with wonder. Elizabeth and Cove were in good spirits as well. That's so cool! He ran over to a street magician who was currently doing a card trick for a group of enchanted tourists. Derek clapped when the magician showed a middle-aged man his card. Derek turned back to the group with a curious gleam on his face. What does it take to perform here anyway? Do you have to ask somebody, or you just show up and start doing stuff? Why would you... Oh, who would even ask? Oh, who would you... I can read. Who would you even ask? It's a public street. Hey, Miss Mayor, can I pull a rabbit out of my hat? Please, Flopsy is well behaved, I promise. Derek chuckled, his eyes searching up and down the scene. Maybe there's a boss of the shopping street? No one does any of this around my neighborhood. It's just regular stores behind walls. It's different if someone wants a real store, but here I'm pretty sure people are just putting on their little shows wherever they want, and do whatever. That's so neat. Would we be allowed to do something too? Cove laughed, and Derek began almost vibrating with excitement. Elizabeth rolled her eyes. What would we do? Well, I don't know what.
Not yet, I mean. I just found out it's a possibility, you know? There's gotta be something. We know cool stuff. I'm sure if we think about it, we can plan a show that'd really get a crowd pumped.
uh, I mean, when I was younger, I might be a little more about it. Nowadays, I'd be like, no way, not at all. But, nah, you felt he could try this idea on his own. I'm not really one to be a part of that.
I wonder if I could do some soccer tricks?
Do you think that'd work?
I don't know yet.
With some amusement, the gang continued to peruse the stalls. Elizabeth found some earrings with a dangling, badly misprinted globe that everyone laughed at. Cove picked out a blob as Iceland, but Derek thought it had to be Greenland. You know this is a world with what looks like 9 continents? I think you're both wrong.
No, it's Australia.
The other 3 giggled at your interjection. Suddenly, Cove froze. You stared at him, and then tried to see what caught his attention. When you saw a familiar face down the way, it all made sense. Between the crowds, his bright hair stood out like a neon green bowl in a kitchen sink. It was Jeremy. Jeremy slowly drifted his eyes down the street, and his eyes widened in mutual recognition. He definitely noticed you. Derek frowned and Cove sighed. Neither of them were happy to see him again. Jeremy is just thinking, absolutely not. You have to get a city's approval with that. Yeah. Yeah, maybe in a small town you could get away with it, like a small beachside town. But yeah, definitely in like bigger cities, you would have to get approval for something like that for sure. I'm the type to try and be polite no matter what. You decided to... or look away awkwardly. Oh, no, that's like in a mean way. Oh, you decided to smile at Jeremy. He just looked dismissive. Elizabeth raised an eyebrow. Her gaze swept over Jeremy without a hint of a clue. Jeremy simply scoffed to himself and waded deeper into the crowd of people. Derek relaxed and exhaled loudly.
I'm glad he's not gonna start anything.
He peeked over at Elizabeth with a tiny smirk.
See? That was the mean kid.
She still didn't get it. That first summer day hadn't made nearly as much of an impression on her as it did for Derek, but he smiled and waved it off.
Just forget about him.
I already have. He laughed, and Cove smiled lightly. He seemed in a much better mood now that Jeremy was gone. Your eyes wandered over to where he disappeared. You hadn't forgotten the day you met him either. He was only going to be in town for vacation with the parents he hated. That glimpse was probably the last time you would ever see him. That sounds suspicious. You kept the thought to yourself. Elizabeth snapped her fingers in front of your face. Apparently you had spaced out. Cove and Derek were already at the next stall. Come on, unless you want to get left here. You nodded and caught up with the others. Cove raised an eyebrow.
What were you thinking about?
Nothing. Press X to doubt, yeah. He gave you a searching look, but let it drop when Derek yelled at you to go check something out. You couldn't help but wonder, though. What would have happened if you would have interacted with Jeremy more? Sighed Gilsey. You were glad that you wouldn't find out. Jeremy was unlike anyone you had met before. You thought he was kind of pitiful. You and the group moved on from the stall and from Jeremy. It didn't take long for everyone to return to the joking. You all enjoyed what little time you had left, as Elizabeth mentioned the hour was almost up. The little trip had flown by, and lunch must have been waiting for you now. Derek bounced on the balls of his feet.
Come on, guys, let's get going so we can eat. I'm starving.
You nodded. You nodded silently. Cove stretched one of his arms lazily.
Let's go then.
You looked at him appraisingly. You asked Cove to carry you back to the house. You nodded at him. Then you followed Elizabeth as she took it upon herself to lead the way home. She walked fast, much faster than Derek preferred. She kept gaining a lead, and then Derek would jog back up to the group. With Cove's long legs, he had no trouble keeping up. I'm a back-of-the-pack type of person. I make sure nobody's falling behind. You gave Derek some company, which made him brighten up considerably. He brought up his idea of trying to make up a performance again, and you listened to his plans. For the most part, you could tell he was being silly on purpose, but there was a shine in his eyes. You both got so engrossed in the conversation that you didn't notice how far you'd fallen behind your sister until Cove looked over his shoulder and shouted something. Derek grinned at you, and then tried to make it a race to catch up with Elizabeth. It was a pleasant walk home, and in no time you had made it back. Derek got to the front door and held it open for everyone as you each moseyed inside. He's such a polite little gentleman. The three parents were still in the kitchen. They looked up and waved. Welcome back, everyone.
You made it just in time.
I hope you're hungry. So, did everyone have a nice time out? She gestured for people to take a seat at the table. Plates and silverware had already been placed out. You took your normal seat. Elizabeth sat across from you, and Derek took the seat to your left. Cove sat on your right.
Oh yeah, we had a great time.
It was fine. Cove shrugged, not willing to say more than that. Yeah, the bank eyes went off without a hitch. I really liked it.
That's good in my book.
Casually, Mr. Holden sat in an empty seat across from Cove. He smiled at you and all the other kids. Mom set down a platter full of water glasses on the table. She looked down at the gathering. It's a good thing we have 8 chairs. I can't remember the last time we've had a group this big over for a meal. Did we never have the Holdens, all 3 over? Anyway. Can you pass the drinks down to the other side? Make sure you all get one.
Sure.
Those close to the cups obliged and started offering waters around. As everything got set up, Ma chided Elizabeth to take her elbows off the table. And you shouldn't slouch. She pointed to Mr. Holden, who was leaning forward with both arms on the table. Oops. Mr. Holden seemed unsure about all the sudden attention and carefully rearranged his posture to something suitable for a fancy dinner. He smiled sheepishly at Ma. Elizabeth rolled her eyes, and Ma gave a level look at her. You shouldn't be impolite to a guest in the house either. Elizabeth groaned, long and long-suffering. Ma giggled, and Mr. Holden chuckled. The lot of you could learn a thing or two from Derek. He has the best manners here. Derek blushed, but it was true. His posture was upright and formal. He even held his fork gracefully. Who is Derek? Who is he? I feel like there's something about him then. Because they're really hammering home that he's very well-mannered. His table manners, on top of all his attempts to age your parents, made him the model of a meal attendee behavior. I can speak. It's fine.
It's nothing.
It's true, though. You have been a lovely guest.
I've noticed that, too. It's always nice when you stay over, Derek.
Derek smiled and sat a little taller in his chair. And do you have anything good to say about our other guest? She looked deliberately at Cove with a teasing smirk. Or is there just nothing to say? His DLC dives into his behavior? Fair enough. That makes sense.
Well, Cove is my number one, but he does still clean his hands by wiping them on his pants.
Cove frowned at that and absent-mindedly brushed his hands on his pant leg. Your mom's laughed lightly. Elizabeth, you should know after all these years, Cove is hardly a guest anymore. Cove smiled awkwardly.
Thanks.
Implying that he's family, not that he's unwelcome here. You complimented Derek on his politeness.
It's cool how you know all those manner things. Oh, thank you.
He seemed more embarrassed by getting a compliment from a kid his age. Everyone ate their meal together and continued to hang out for the afternoon. After the food, you and the others played a couple games and talked about plans for the upcoming year. The time passed by quickly, and soon it was time to part ways. Mr. Holden talked to your moms and Cove. Mr. Holden talked to your moms, and Cove drifted over to you, knowing that as soon as his dad finished up, he would be leaving.
It'd be cool to stay, but we have some stuff to do before everything closes today.
Yeah, bye. Could you move? I need the phone. Cove raised an eyebrow, and Elizabeth impatiently gestured behind him. Cove realized he was standing right in front of where the receiver was placed. He sidestepped out of the way and shook his head, clearly thinking Elizabeth was rushing too much. Your sister made a beeline for the phone and started dialing the number of what you figured was one of her friends. Knowing Elizabeth, she was going to be on there for a while. You, Cove, and Derek shuffled closer to the door. It seemed like Mr. Holden was wrapping up his conversation, so everyone started saying their various farewells.
We gotta do this again sometime.
Yeah, see ya. Cove turned to you and smiled slightly.
Bye, Gemstone.
Ruffled Cove's hair like an adult. I think he needs a hug today. He just said bye to his mom. After a whole summer with her, he's probably not going to see her for a while. Let's hug him. You stepped forward and spread your arms wide. Cove only had a moment to react before you encircled him in your arms. Cove took a second to return the hug, surprised. He leaned into you and held on. Then he hovered nearby with a small smile on his face when it ended.
Seriously, dude, we'll have to hang out later. I'm gonna miss you during school.
He punched Cove's arm softly. Cove still rubbed the spot afterwards. Cove and his dad left soon after that. Your parents started cleaning up the house, and Elizabeth was still chatting to her friends on the phone. It was just you and Derek left. He elected to stay outside in front of the house to wait for his dad to pick him up. You decided to keep your guest company, although he was originally Cove's visitor. A light summer breeze flew through your hair as Derek shifted his weight from foot to foot.
Thanks for waiting with me.
He kicked at the ground distractedly.
That's still gonna be a while, so do you want to go for a walk?
Sure, I don't mind. The two of you walked down the street again, just wandering without a destination planned. It was a quiet stroll. Too quiet for Derek being the company. You turned to him when you had noticed that he wasn't saying a word. That was unusual. Derek always had something he could chat about. You weren't sure if you should ask about it. Somehow, you ended up at the old park near the beach. You glanced over to Derek once more, still expecting him to say something any second now. However, nothing came from him. In fact, now you noticed a frown creeping on his face. Derek smiled when he realized you were watching. At least, his mouth was turned up. There wasn't anything that really felt happy in the expression. He turned away and the smile fell off his face. His eyes stared intently at the ground, and he raised an eyebrow. If you want to talk about something, I'm here.
I'm a little sad. It's just, with school starting back up again, it's gonna be harder to visit. I'm gonna have homework and clubs and practices and everything else. It really sucks we go to different schools.
His face screwed up and his fists were closed tightly together. This was really concerning him.
What if we don't have time?
He channeled some optimism into the conversation. We'll make time. We can talk over the phone and have plans for weekends. It'll be okay. Derek looked at the sky. It was orange and purple with little wisps of clouds scattered around. A plane flew high with a jet stream trailing behind it. Then he turned to the ground again. Derek's face was tilted far enough down that it was hard to read his expression. Oh no. Uh-oh. Is he gonna come face across doors?
Hey, Gemstone. I actually wanted to talk to you about something. If you don't mind.
There was a pause, and you waited for him to finish his thought.
I was just kinda wondering, do you like guys at all? Like, would you ever want to be with someone who was a boy? Sorry if that's weird to ask.
Or maybe he has a crush on Cove?
Maybe.
Oh no. He's got a determined look on his face. Oh, this poor sweet child.
Okay, then.
He hesitated before finishing his question.
What I mean is, just, is there any guy that you think is kind of cool? That you like? Around here. Not at school or anything like that?
He ducked his head further. You thought about it. There are a lot of guys I think are cool. Yeah, all three. If I say that, he's gonna take it wrong. If I say any of these. Well, he wouldn't take that wrong, but... There are a lot of guys I think are cool. Derek shrugged, then started to mumble and wonder.
Maybe you don't get what I'm trying to ask.
So... No, not with the puppy dog eyes and the eye contact and the blush. No! This poor kid. Derek pulled himself together, somewhat meekly. He looked at you while he tried to project confidence. His posture was too tight for you to believe it. He was nervous. Oh...
You know, thinking ahead and everything is important. You've got to get yourself a game plan and all that. It's good to make plans, especially backup plans.
He babbled, all full of energy and forced gusto.
Well, anyways, I heard about this thing where people make pacts with their good friends and all that. If they don't find anyone else, then they get together. Together. Like they get married and stuff. So I was thinking, since it's good to have plans, it might be cool if we did something like that.
His eyes widened and he started to make frantic hand gestures.
Just, then we'd never have to worry about the future or finding someone. We can set it like a whole decade in the future, forever from now. We'd have graduated high school and probably college too. We'd have jobs and be really grown up. I mean, we'd probably have our own places, maybe our own pets, and student loans and cars.
Derek babbled on for a while more. It was as if all the words he held in silence during your walk had burst out now, all at once. Aw.
So, yeah, what do you think?
Oh. Oh. Oh no. Oh, buddy, sorry, but you are so not my type. Oh no. Should I ask straight out or deflect? I wish I was honest enough to like do this, but I also really care about people's feelings, so I'm like, I know it's important to be honest for stuff like this, but it's really hard. Grr. I mean, I've done stuff like this before, but do you like me? The little gasp.
Of course I like you, but it's not.
He had to pause, desperate to find a way to explain himself.
It's. Well, you don't have to think about that kind of thing right now. It's better to worry about all that later, when we're grown up. That's why it's good to have a plan, you know? And, well, honestly, I think you and me would work out the best for that.
Oh. I am not accepting that. That's just the wrong thing to do. I'm so sorry, buddy.
I'll think about it. It's kind of a big decision for just being put on the spot. Yeah, sure. Don't worry about it. It was just an idea. Thanks for hearing me out and answering my questions and stuff.
You felt a little worried that Derek wasn't happy. When he saw your face, he smiled encouragingly.
I promise I'm not mad. I was just wondering. I'm sure things will be okay in the future, no matter what.
You just nodded. You didn't spend much longer at the park after that. Derek didn't want to miss his dad, so you both made your way back to your street. Although good on him for end of the summer working up the courage just to make sure that he got it out. What a brave boy. What a little gentleman. After Derek went back home, you decided to settle in for the night. Stretching your arms over your head, you noticed that the living room and the phone were free. Let's call Lee. We haven't talked to our cousin in a bit. You picked up the receiver and quickly punched in the familiar number while going to take a seat on the couch. Soon enough, after explaining the situation to the housekeeper, Lee answered.
Hi, Lee. Can you talk? Definitely. We practically have to. My gosh, can you believe it's almost time for school to start? What happened to our summer? School starts first thing tomorrow for me. And I thought starting next week was bad enough. Enjoy your last week. Oh, I will. I hope you survive your first day. I think it'll be okay. School isn't too bad. That's true. Maybe it'll end up being a really good year. And at least summer was nice while it lasted, right? We were busy. Yeah.
Fondly, you thought about all the best memories you made this summer. Lee was there for some, but there were still many you hadn't filled her in on yet. You moved on to talk about her. What was your big highlight of the summer, Lee?
Talking to you is always the best part of my summer.
Even though it was a phone call, you just knew that Lee was winking at you.
Come on, tell me. What, you don't believe me? Lee. Okay, so a high point for me was when I took that trip with my parents to Europe. It was amazing.
You and Lee continued to go over your adventures until you were both yawning to each other over the phone. At that, you decided it was time to say goodbye for now. You did have school to wake up for in the morning.
Bye, Lee. Talk to you later.
You left the phone on the side table for now. No, put it back where it goes. Looking at the clock on the wall, you saw that there was only about 10 minutes until your moms would be insisting you had to go to bed, so you could be rested enough for school. You stretched your legs out on the couch and sighed in defeat, watching the minute hand change 1 minute closer to bedtime. You rearranged yourself, feeling restless, and looked out the window. Startled initially, you spotted a figure out in the hills. It was Cove. When the surprise faded, you realized it really wasn't that much of a shock at all. It was exactly something Cove would do. It's about to be bedtime on a school night, but we still have a couple minutes. You went outside to meet up with him. Strolling casually, you went over to the front door. Oh, I'm gonna get caught by my parents, aren't I? Oh! When you arrived, you noticed how many fireflies were out that night. They drifted along lazily, barely minding your presence as you waded through to reach the top of the hill. Cove turned towards you as you approached, and you noticed right away that Cove looked happy to see you.
Hey.
You had a bounce in your step. You weren't sure how long you'd get before your mom's roped you back inside for bed.
Hey, what are you doing out here?
Not really. He shrugged, seeming unhappy with his own answer. You stared at him, waiting for him to continue.
Well, I guess I was feeling kind of weird about stuff, so I'm getting some fresh air before bed.
You nodded. His mouth pulled into a bent smile. Cove let himself fall back onto his butt, then all the way down, so he was laying on his back. He looked up at the sky. You laid down yourself. You lowered yourself to lay back on the hill. He had been lost in thought, or was possibly waiting for you to situate yourself, but he started speaking unprompted again.
Thanks for telling me about my dad, and the money he offered you to be my friend.
Are we getting the scene because we told him? Are we getting a fun scene? This was probably the last thing you were expecting out of him. Cove seemed to pick up on that and had stretched his arms out wide in front of him.
This is where we met, remember? It happened that day.
You could recall the sad little boy with a pink cast who you found in this very spot. It felt like a lifetime ago.
I kind of have a strange feeling looking at you. Not in a bad way. Just thinking about you and then really seeing you now. It's something.
It was almost unbelievable how much of an impact he made on your life just by moving in next door. You couldn't even imagine what your days might have looked like in a world where you hadn't met him. Cove glanced back at you, waiting for a response, and you had no idea what to say. Then, still without a word from you, Cove gave an exaggerated shrug.
What? It's you.
Huh? He snickered before answering. He looked thoroughly amused by your reaction.
That's what you do all the time, so I'm being you.
Oh. My shrug answers. You felt bashful about his joke. Oh no, I don't want him to. You were stunned he noticed enough to take note of it. There was no response that you could give, but you noticed Cove smiling softly at you. He wasn't trying to be mean with it. Honestly, there weren't many people you could think of who could tease you about something like that. Returning his smile, you realized there was no denying that you two have been around each other for a long time. Cove broke the quiet before it could fully settle.
Yeah, see you then.
With a final wave, Cove headed for home. But you stayed for a few minutes longer. Your mind kept going back to his simple statement, "See you tomorrow." No matter how much was changing around you, there were some things in your life that always seemed to remain true. The hills felt warm to you that night. Before you knew it, you were getting comfortable under the covers in your room. Your mind couldn't help but still be buzzing with thoughts about the future. You felt excited. There was little doubt in your mind that things were moving forward, and you couldn't wait to find out what changes were waiting for you on the horizon. Slowly, your eyes grew heavy as you drifted off to sleep, your mind spinning with wishful thoughts. No matter what happened next, you could only hope that you would make the most of it. You were ensnared in a dream when a noise from the outside world jostled you. Your eyes snapped open. The light clatter continued. Now that you were more alert, you could distinguish it as a tapping sound. Quiet, slow, but persistent. Each beat was like being poked. You couldn't ignore it. You lifted your head from the pillow, then looked for the source. Not much work was needed to puzzle it out. It was from the window. With that, you knew exactly what it was. From the color of the light flickering into your room, it was too early for anyone to be awake, including the sun, It had barely hauled itself over the horizon, but that didn't stop some people, it seemed. You sat up in bed and opened the window wide. Cool air, not yet warmed by the day, tickled your face as it pushed into your room. And just as you had expected, there was your neighbor crouching on your windowsill. He was fully dressed, though not for school. He was wearing a wetsuit and a fond smile. Oh!
Hi, Gemstone.
You stared back, blinking.
So technically we won't be back to school for a few more hours.
His voice was delicate, yet deliberate, each word a careful explanation.
Classes haven't actually started yet, so do you want to hit the beach with me one more time this summer?
Always. His smile widened affectionately. You rushed to get changed into something suitable while Cove climbed back down to ground level. Your limbs, still half asleep, struggled somewhat as you attempted to coordinate them into a swimsuit, but you got there in the end. Soon you were tiptoeing out of your front door, clutching a towel. Cove was already there to greet you. Your eyes met. Cove's gaze darted to your destination and back to you. You checked the door was closed, gave him a thumbs up, and the two of you leapt into action. Wordlessly, you began to run down the familiar path ahead, Cove beside you. The thrill of your illicit outing made you want to laugh. Not that you dared. If anyone in your family looked out and saw you, then your summer would be back to being over. One glance at Cove told you that he was exactly the same, holding back snickers for fear of being heard and caught. The towel streamed out from under your arm like a cape. You were running so fast downhill that simply keeping your balance and not tumbling down was a real threat. It just wasn't enough of one to make you slow your pace. For every step you took, the beach was a little closer and the day a little brighter. What lay ahead of you would arrive, and you were happy to meet it. Ah, wow. Well, should we... I don't think I can't save here, so we'll have to upgrade ourselves to our next look. So let's see. Maybe there's twin ponytails like my adult gemstone here. There we go. It me. Next. Freckles. Oh, gemstone doesn't have freckles, right? Ba 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 ba. My hands are still. Keep that. Keep that. Keep that. Alrighty. I wear hats every once in a while, but I don't wear these so much. No ring. Short nails, plain. Yeah. Alright. So, upgraded gemstone, a little bit older as an adult. We're gonna save here. And we can pick up with our choices next time, so that we know what we're getting into. But yes, thank you so much for joining. That's gonna be it for today. We'll pick up directly here next week. But I hope that you enjoyed. The story is so cute, and I love their dynamic. Oh, what little sweethearts. Ooh, cliffhanger. No, we finished. Oh, like which I'm gonna choose for this? Hehehe. But yes, so thank you so much for watching. Farewell, and have a wonderful day.